And here's some, I guess I would say, thoughts on a famine or realities of a famine. In a famine, people don't necessarily starve to death. Often some other ailment gets them first. Chronic malnutrition impairs the body's ability to battle infection, and the hungry become increasingly susceptible to tuberculosis and typhoid. The starved body is too weak to metabolize antibiotics, even if they're available, and normally curable illnesses suddenly become fatal. Wild fluctuations of body chemistry can trigger strokes and heart attacks. People die from eating substitute foods that their bodies can't digest. Starvation can be a sneaky killer that disguises itself under bland statistics of increased child mortality or decreased life expectancy. It leaves behind only circumstantial evidence of excess mortality, statistics that show a higher than normal deaths during a certain period. Yet another gratuitous cruelty. The killer, famine, targets the most innocent. The people who would never steal food, lie, cheat, break the law, or betray a friend. It was a phenomenon that the Italian writer Primo Levi identified after emerging from Auschwitz, when he wrote that he and his fellow survivors never wanted to see one another again after the war, because they had all done something of which they were ashamed. As Mrs. Song would observe a decade later, when she thought back on all the people she knew who died during those years, it was the simple and kind-hearted people who did what they were told. They were the first to die. By 1998, an estimated 600,000 to 2 million North Koreans had died as a result of the famine, as much as 10% of the population. By the end of 1998, the worst of the famine was over. Not necessarily because anything had improved, but, as Mrs. Song later surmised, because there were fewer mouths to feed. Everybody who was going to die was already dead. Now, that's how the famine wrapped up, but to go a little bit in depth of what it was like once the famine was raging, people became homeless, which was strange because in North Korea, they never had a problem with homelessness, because if you wanted food, you needed to live in your home because the government would allegedly bring you food. Well, once they weren't bringing food anymore, there was no reason to stay at home. So now you had people going out trying to survive. Right. And this talks a little bit about that, especially for the children. It was a dangerous life. The children couldn't sleep without worrying that somebody, perhaps another gang member, would steal what little they had. There were strange stories going around about adults who preyed on children, not just for sex, but for food. Hayek was told about people who would drug children, kill them, and butcher them for meat. Behind the station, near the railroad tracks, were vendors who cooked up soup and noodles over small burners, and it was said that the gray chunks of meat floating in the broth were human flesh. The stories got more and more horrific. Supposedly, one father went so insane with hunger that he ate his own baby. A market woman was said to have been arrested for selling soup made from human bones. From my interviews with the defectors, it does appear that there were cases in which people were arrested and executed for cannibalism.